the United States and China, two global superpowers with a complex and intertwined history. For decades, their relationship was primarily defined by trade. China, with its massive manufacturing capacity, became the world's factory. The US, with its insatiable consumer demand, became China's biggest customer. This economic partnership fueled tremendous growth for both nations. China rose from poverty to become the world's second-largest economy. The US enjoyed access to affordable goods, keeping inflation in check and consumer spending high. However, this seemingly symbiotic relationship masked underlying tensions. Concerns over China's trade practices, intellectual property theft, and growing technological prowess began to simmer. These concerns, coupled with a shift in U.S. political winds, set the stage for a dramatic change in the U.S.-China trade dynamic. The seeds of the trade war were sown years before the first shots were fired. American businesses had long complained about China's unfair trade practices. These included forced technology transfers, intellectual property theft, and government subsidies that gave Chinese companies an unfair advantage. In 2017, a new administration in the United States took a more confrontational approach towards China. Viewing China's trade practices as a threat to American economic dominance, the U.S. imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. China, refusing to back down, retaliated with tariffs of its own on American products. This marked the beginning of a tit-for-tat trade war that would have far-reaching consequences for both nations and the global economy. The trade war quickly escalated, with both sides imposing tariffs on a widening range of goods. The impact was immediate and significant. Businesses on both sides of the Pacific faced higher costs, disrupted supply chains, and lost market share. American farmers, who had come to rely on China as a major export market for soybeans and other agricultural products, were hit particularly hard. Chinese buyers turned to other suppliers, leaving American farmers with surplus crops and plummeting prices. The trade war also disrupted global supply chains. Companies that had relied on components from both countries were forced to find alternative sources or face production delays and increased costs. This uncertainty sent shockwaves through the global economy. The American auto industry found itself caught in the crossfire of the trade war. China, with its burgeoning middle class, had become a critical market for American car manufacturers. However, the tariffs imposed by both countries made American cars more expensive for Chinese consumers. At the same time, Chinese car manufacturers, benefiting from government support and lower production costs, began to increase their market share both domestically and abroad. This perfect storm of factors led to a sharp decline in American car exports to China. The trade war highlighted the vulnerabilities of relying too heavily on a single market. It also underscored the challenges American businesses faced in competing with Chinese companies that enjoyed significant government support. Section 5, by the numbers, charting the decline of U.S. exports. The impact of the trade war on U.S. exports to China was stark. The tariffs imposed by both nations created a ripple effect that was felt across various industries and sectors. In 2017, before the tariffs were imposed, the U.S. exported over $180 billion worth of goods to China. This was a time when trade relations were relatively stable, and American businesses were thriving. By 2019, that number had plummeted to $120 billion, a decline of over 30%. This dramatic drop was a clear indicator of the strained trade relations and the economic challenges that followed. The decline was particularly pronounced in key sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and technology. These sectors, which once stood as pillars of American export strength, faced significant setbacks. Soybean exports, once a major source of revenue for American farmers, fell by over 70%. This decline not only affected the farmers, but also had a cascading effect on the rural economy. Exports of automobiles and aircraft, symbols of American industrial might, also experienced steep declines. These industries, which employ thousands of workers, saw reduced demand and production cuts. These numbers tell a story of lost opportunities and economic pain for American businesses and workers. Factories closed, jobs were lost, and communities that depended on these industries faced uncertain futures. They also highlight the high cost of the trade war for both countries. While the U.S. faced significant export declines, China also experienced disruptions in its supply chains and increased costs for imported goods. The trade war, in essence, created a lose-lose situation for both economic giants. Section 6. The ripple effect, unintended consequences of the trade war. The trade war's impact extended far beyond the US and China. The uncertainty it generated reverberated throughout the global economy, dampening investment, disrupting supply chains, and slowing economic growth. Emerging markets, many of which rely on exports to both the US and China, were particularly vulnerable. The trade war exacerbated existing economic challenges in these countries, leading to currency depreciations, capital flight, and social unrest. The trade war also highlighted the interconnectedness of the global economy. It demonstrated how actions taken by two countries, even in pursuit of their own national interests, can have far-reaching and often unintended consequences for the rest of the world. Section 7. Can we talk? The importance of dialogue and diplomacy. Despite the escalating tensions, both the US and China recognized the need for dialogue. After months of negotiations, the two countries reached a Phase 1 trade deal in January 2020. The deal included commitments from China to increase purchases of American goods and address some US concerns about intellectual property theft. However, the deal left many of the underlying issues unresolved. The tariffs imposed during the trade war remained largely in place, and tensions between the two countries continued to simmer. The Phase 1 deal represented a fragile truce rather than a lasting peace. Section 8. Charting a course through uncertain waters. Navigating the future of US-China trade. The future of US-China trade relations remains uncertain, with many variables at play that could influence the direction and stability of this crucial economic partnership. The trade war demonstrated the deep economic ties between the two countries, highlighting how interconnected their economies have become over the years. However, it also exposed the underlying tensions and mistrust that threaten to unravel their relationship, creating a complex web of challenges that both nations must navigate carefully. Finding a path forward will require both sides to address their concerns in a constructive and mutually beneficial manner, fostering an environment where dialogue and cooperation can thrive. This will involve difficult conversations and compromises on both sides as they work to bridge the gap between their differing economic and political priorities. The U.S. needs to balance its desire to protect American jobs and intellectual property, ensuring that its workforce and innovations are safeguarded against unfair practices. At the same time, it must maintain a stable and predictable trading relationship with China, which is essential for the global economy. China, in turn, needs to address U.S. concerns about its trade practices, including issues related to market access, subsidies, and intellectual property rights. While continuing its economic development and technological advancement, China must also demonstrate a commitment to fair trade practices, ensuring that its growth benefits not only itself, but also its trading partners. Section 9. A world intertwined. Recognizing the stakes for the global economy. In today's interconnected world, the actions of one nation can reverberate across the globe, affecting economies far and wide. The US-China trade war served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy. This conflict highlighted how deeply intertwined our economic systems are, and how a disruption in one part of the world can lead to significant consequences elsewhere. It demonstrated how actions taken by two countries can have ripple effects that are felt around the world. The tariffs and trade barriers imposed not only affected businesses in the US and China, but also had a cascading effect on global supply chains, impacting industries from electronics to agriculture. As the world's two largest economies, the US and China have a responsibility to manage their relationship in a way that promotes global economic stability and growth. Their economic policies and decisions can set the tone for international trade and investment, influencing markets and economies worldwide. This requires cooperation, dialogue, and a willingness to find common ground. Diplomatic efforts and negotiations are crucial in ensuring that conflicts are resolved amicably and that economic policies are aligned for mutual benefit. The stakes are high, not just for the US and China, but for the entire world. The global economy thrives on stability and predictability, and any prolonged conflict between major economic powers can lead to uncertainty and volatility. A protracted trade war between the two superpowers would have devastating consequences for the global economy, leading to job losses, slower growth, and increased poverty. Industries that rely on international trade would suffer, and consumers would face higher prices and reduced choices. Finding a path to a more stable and cooperative relationship is not just in the best interests of the US and China, it is in the best interests of us all. A collaborative approach can pave the way for sustainable economic growth, innovation, and prosperity, benefiting people and businesses around the globe.